I'm interested to talk about how you can do good through business solutions. And so I'm Emma Stewart. I am, I guess, what you'd call a serial entrepreneur, social entrepreneur. I've started and grown a number of social businesses over my career, which has spanned about sort of 25 years. Before that, I was a TV producer. And I guess what drives me generally in work is trying to tackle big societal problems, whether it's people being out of work, whether it's people being hungry, whether it's people not being able to fulfill their potential, but doing that through business solutions. So I started Timewise with my co-founder, Karen, actually about, Timewise originally was an organisation called Women Like Us, which we started almost 20 years ago now. And the original driver was very personal. It was because both Karen and myself had had professional careers, and we then both had children, and we realised that it was a challenge juggling work and childcare. And we wanted to try and support initially a lot of the other women that we saw in our own communities who were dropping out of the workplace, and critically businesses who were missing out on that talent because they weren't able to offer some form of flexible working. So the original idea was very much to coach women back to work. We did that for a number of years. We did that through a range of different coaching programs that were initially funded through European funding, and then we very, soon realised that the issue really was less about supporting women back to work. It was more about supporting businesses to get on board with flexible working. And as a result, we pivoted and changed the organisation to Timewise, and created a jobs board and a recruitment agency, and then moved into consulting for businesses. And we grew it to be quite a large organisation. It still runs today. Timewise is one of the main influences on flexibility. We've changed legislation. We've supported thousands and thousands of people through our jobs board, and we've worked with some of the UK's major businesses. And I guess the kind of driver really for what it does now is the same as then, which is to help businesses to understand the benefits of flexibility. The world has changed, obviously, since the pandemic and the introduction of hybrid working, but critically to support businesses to look at how to adapt culture, behaviours, recruitment practices, working practices, and job design to make sure that we are able to benefit from a wide talent pool of people who need to work in different ways. And we know that most managers, most business leaders want to do that and are open to that. Often we face challenges around supporting our managers and how to really think through job design. So that's what Timewise does still. It runs a whole range of programs, provides consultancy and support to businesses who are looking to attract and retain talent by getting better at how they design jobs.
Brilliant. So looking at flexible and part-time working today, what trends are you noticing across different industries?
Well, it's fair to say, obviously, in the last 4 years, hybrid working has sort of exploded onto the scene. And I think we've seen a massive shift in acceptance of flexibility from a cultural perspective. If done well, hybrid is a really, really good thing. Obviously, we need to ensure that doing it well means that the businesses that do it well need to make sure that they have really clear communication, the culture's right, trust is there, connectivity is there, all of the things that you will all have read about countless times. I guess the trends that we've seen shift have been really prevalent in where we work. So, we've seen workplaces change, physical infrastructure in offices has changed. We've seen technology leveraged and innovated to make sure that we can support people. The thing that we've seen less of is how much people work, if we think about the different axes of flexibility and when people work. So hybrid is still very prevalent, although obviously it's settling down a bit and we're getting a bit of a backlash these days, which I'll come on to. But what we haven't seen change as much is the extent to which people are able to work part-time. And also what we haven't seen is the extent to which people in sectors like sales, so in frontline sectors like wholesale, in retail, in construction, in the NHS, in social care, sectors where people physically need to be in a place, in a locality, whether it's a construction site, a hospital, a school, a vehicle, that has changed less. And there's good reason for that. It's harder to think about how you can give people some form of flexibility when it's not about location. So hybrid is great, but really all hybrid is saying work the same hours in the same way, but from a different location. And that is really, really valuable for lots of people, particularly those with health issues and care responsibilities. But actually, what's changed less is the underlying piece around how do we build capabilities around job design to think about how we can shift working practices around how much people work. We've all experienced a lot of overwork in the last few years. People do want to work less, particularly when they're older. And we've seen less around when people are able to work. So in shift-based environments, there's been a real challenge in making sure that there is parity for your organisations, and I'm sure many of you will have experienced this. And a lot of the work that Timewise has done over the last few years is to try and prove that it is in fact possible to give people essentially some level of autonomy and control over how they work in frontline environments as much as it is in office-based environments. Because if you don't have that, then the risk, which we've all been through and experienced over the last few years, is you end up with this sort of two-tier work culture of the sort of flex house, if you like, and the flex have-nots. And again, in the environment we're in at the moment, particularly where we're all facing into labour market pressures around NI, minimum wage costs, etc., we really need to keep hold of the good people that we've got, the committed people that we've got, and we need to make sure that offering some form of autonomy and control in how, when, and where people work is available to everybody. So there's been a lot of change, but in some areas there hasn't been that much change. And that's really about trying to understand how we design jobs, what job design means in terms of the ability to carve jobs in a way that can give somebody some form of input into the working pattern and practices that they have.
Brilliant. Is this a good point in which to ask people here on this chat what they're doing to support flexible working, or any key barriers or challenges or examples of good job design that's working? Let me post this into the chat. While people are thinking about that, maybe we can move on to what the point that you made. There's a big push now for people to return back to the office. I mean, what's your take on that?
It's a new culture war, isn't it? I think it's sort of RTO. I mean, we didn't know the term RTO, return to office, until a couple of years ago, but it's obviously it's a big debate at the moment. Look, I think it's fair to say that investing in making hybrid work takes time and effort, and if it's not done well, then it doesn't work well. And so I think there are a lot of firms that are concerned, if they haven't done it well, that productivity is falling. Now, if you look at the evidence of hybrid, and there's been a lot of analysis done from various different companies, including Timewise, actually, if done well, hybrid can definitely maintain and in a lot of ways enhance productivity. It can absolutely support talent attraction and retention. What's happened in the last few years is we've seen this explosion in hybrid. We've also seen the level of demand. It's become very prevalent. People will walk if they're not able to have some form of flexibility. So it needs to be done well. But I think the reason that a lot of firms are asking people to come back into the office, underlying it is probably that they haven't done it. It hasn't worked brilliantly, but that is partly about making sure, again, that you give some level of parity to everybody in your organisation, and that it isn't just a one size fits all. We've all tried this sort of 2 days in, 3 days at home, 3 days in, 2 days at home. The The bits around the edges of hybrid that mean that it doesn't work are things like, how do we support workplace culture? How do we support office culture? How do we make sure that people can have moments when they are together working well? And I think if we want to understand how to do hybrid well, we really need to not just think about the days and the location, but the tasks that people are doing, the way people are working in teams, and really the best form of hybrid working. And those businesses that have made it work, and many of them were doing flexibility before the pandemic, trained their managers to really give autonomy and control to teams to try and work out what best works within a particular team in the context of hybrid, to make sure that there are absolute touch points over the course of the week where people physically come together, to make sure that if you're dealing with different generations, yes, we need to ensure that those people with caring responsibilities, those people who are more senior and who want to work from home, have some opportunity to do that, but that they also come in for our younger workers who are new entrants to the labour market and who need to be around people to learn by osmosis. You can't learn how to do a job if you're always at home. So it's a nuanced conversation, and it's got to be about thinking about the different kind of people that you're working with, thinking about the teams that you have. It's got to be about testing different ways of doing this. And it's messy. It's really messy hybrid working. But if you can invest the time also in training managers, in giving them the time and the space to test different ways of doing this, you can get it right. And the organizations that have, like I said, are maintaining it. You know, if you want people to behave like adults, we need to treat them like adults. We need to trust people to find solutions here. And blanket returning to office rules, in my view, and for many people who've been involved in flexible working for many years, isn't the answer. So yeah, it's a difficult time, but trust is
We've
key.
got a couple of really good examples here, actually. I'd love to hear more about these. So we've got, let's start with Louise. She's in the office 4 days a week, Monday to Thursday, but they get to work from home on Friday and finish at 12. I want to work where you work, Louise. I'm just kidding, but it would be great to hear more about that if you are willing to share, and it's okay if you prefer not to. Are you able to come off mute if you wanted to share more, and if not, that's totally fine.
I think I'm off mute now.
Yes.
Hi. Yeah, so we when I first started working at Rosetta, it was mainly remote because it was during COVID, and then we started kind of gradually increasing the days in the office. But I think our CEO was aware that it'd be quite a big change to go from kind of fully remote to then coming into the office a lot. So he said that we'd work in the office Monday to Friday. We'd work an extra hour kind of each day. So it's the same hours in the week, but then we can work from home on a Friday and finish at 12. But yeah, it works really well. And it was an opt-in thing as well, because obviously with childcare, some people Monday to Thursday couldn't work the extra hour. So it's not something they have to do, but it's an option that people could opt in for. And I think I'd say probably the majority, if not all, of our staff are now doing that, and it works really well.
That's fantastic. What a great idea, actually. Work an extra hour Monday to Thursday, take half a day Friday off. The work gets done.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Louise. I'd love to hear more from Michelle, who asks colleagues to be in only for 50% of the week, in the office for 50% of the week. Michelle, would you be interested to share more? And it's okay if you don't.
Yeah, that's fine. So I work for Mondelez, and we do ask our colleagues to be in the office 50% of the week. They can choose what days they're in. Some teams do have anchor days, so days when the whole team come in. But yeah, we're super flexible. We are seeing that our office environments are maybe not as busy on a Monday and a Friday. They seem to be the quieter days. We see the same people coming in 50% of the week. And some people we haven't seen since probably we came back into the office after lockdown. So a real mix of people.
Michelle, can I ask you a question on the people you haven't seen? Because one of the things that we found from a lot of our work was that sometimes an unintended consequence of people who are fully remote and not part of the team, that they can get overlooked for projects, tasks, that they don't necessarily get the input or the opportunities to do things because there's a sense of sort of otherness, that they're not around, and wrongly a perception that they're not as committed because they're not necessarily physically present. Has your business found a way to make sure that people who are 100% remote are included in opportunities, tasks, projects, and things like that?
I think it's all down to the line manager, isn't it? And the role that they play. And I think even more so now, the role of the line manager is super important. So kind of we leave it to a local level for people to, address that. The people who haven't been in, I wouldn't say they're any less committed. I think they, there's very legitimate reasons. We are, an older generation now where we are caring for elderly parents. So, I know that we have colleagues who are full-time carers. So to, arrange to come into the office now is a logistical challenge for people. We do everything that we do within the office environment. So I think about the huddles that we have, or kind of meet the leadership sessions, they're all done remotely via Teams and face-to-face. So you can do either or. So we try to be all inclusive. And also we have to respect that, a lot of people, they travel a lot with business. So if you're kind of in our quality teams, for example, they're out doing audits, probably 60% of the year. So actually we have to respect that when they aren't traveling, they want to be home in their own environments.
It sounds like you're doing it really well. I mean, sensible grown-up firms invest in their managers to have the time and the space to trust colleagues and test different ways of doing this, do it really well. And actually, we did a big piece of research a few years back that showed that if you can do that, then the return on investment is really tangible. If you are making sure that people have that flexibility, they'll stay. And you'll attract great new people as well. Like you say, we've got 5 generations in the workforce. We've never had that before in work. And we need to make sure that we can support those older workers as much as the younger workers coming in. But it is a management challenge. And so good leaders will make sure that they invest in their managers. And, again, going back to the premise of this whole conversation, it's about doing good in business. And, the most important people are your people that work for you. So you need to look after them.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think somebody's put in the chat box here about the next generation not learning good office and meeting habits as they work from home in isolation. We've actually had some feedback that there's not enough people in the office for them to do their, for their collaboration. So I guess it depends on the individuals. But
and again,
so
it's,
but
it's not a one size fits all. That's
it's not. But I think what is really prevalent now is that the role of that people manager or line manager is super important. And actually, as a business, we need to almost give them the space to take that step back from their day job and to manage, because nothing is more important now than our people. They're our biggest asset, and actually we need to make the work for them, because we have a huge recruitment opportunity, I think, because when people leave the business, we do struggle to recruit. So we want to keep people.
Definitely. And one thing I'd say just on management is we've got a much bigger, I guess, conversation in the UK at the moment about the extent to which we provide good quality management training and how we invest in it. And actually, a lot of feedback from managers who struggle with this is that they struggle generally with conflict and difficult conversations. And a lot of the reasons, quite often you'll find firms recording people back into the office so they can see them, is often because they blame it on performance. but the issue is completely separate. The issue about performance should be an issue about performance that you need to grapple with as a manager. And we tend to conflate it with flexible working. Or we're like, they're working from home, they're not necessarily performing as well as they should be. But if they're not performing, that's the issue you deal with. You don't necessarily deal with the flexibility issue. So I think there's something, again, if you're a good organisation that invests in your people and your managers, they will be managing people wherever they happen to be well, and they will be performing well. And then the conversation about flexibility just becomes something much cleaner, if you like, that you can have.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much. We also have Carol, who has the allowance and trust to work her hours and workload around her responsibilities, and she can also work from home. Carol, did you want to share a little bit more about that and where you work?
Hi, yeah, I work at Booker, so within my team, because we're spread out around the country really. So I work in an office with just me and my manager, and our other team members are around. So if I am working from home or in the office, like depending if we need to go on site or anything like that, it's quite flexible. As long as you do your hours, you get your work done. If you need to go out for appointments or tend to family or things like that, there's never anyone sort of checking, like they check in obviously to make sure everything's going okay, but they're not watching you, they're not doing all that sort of stuff. So from previous roles that I've had, this is the most comfortable and the most sort of proactive, most productive role I've sort of ever had. And it works for me. So I'm very grateful for that. I get that. Yeah.
That's great.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. And Hilary, did you want to share your side, which is a different perspective, actually, that we need to be, we need to kind of have good office habits, and working in isolation at home can have its challenges.
Yeah, it's just quite interesting. I recently attended a meeting, and it started at 11. And those who know me will not be surprised at all to know that I turned up about 10:15. But anyway, I got there, got to the meeting, got settled, got my laptop, got on the Wi-Fi, went to the toilet, made myself a coffee. So by 10 to 11, all good to go. Somebody that was meeting me there turns up at 11. So I said, "Oh, did you have to travel?" And she went, No, I stayed at the hotel at the end of the road." And I think it's this kind of Teams mentality. So the Teams meeting starts at 11, therefore the meeting starts at 11. Whereas when it's a physical meeting, you have all of those things to do beforehand. And she's quite a young member of the team. So afterwards, I had a little chat with her, and I said, well, it's always better to get there a bit early, because then you can get to talk to people and you can do all of those things and be actually ready to go at 11. And it was just like a little light bulb went off in her head. And it's because they're not in the office and not seeing that behaviour and just learning it kind of, I don't think you like to use this phrase anymore, but at their mother's knee, that they're not seeing it in action. So until somebody tells you, you would never even think of it. So it's quite an eye-opener for me. I just thought, well, if they're not learning that type of thing, what else is there that people aren't learning from the kind of the generation that goes before them? So that was all that was. Yeah. And we've always worked from home because we're so geographically diverse. So it's not a new thing working from home. Fair Share have always been home based. Is an office you can go to if you want to. I'm not entirely sure what the solution is on that. Probably just taking people out to meetings with you more, so they learn good behaviour.
It's a really interesting point, Hilary, and I think we've seen a lot. There's been there's a lot of debate about Gen Y, Gen Z. Well, Gen Z. I can't remember which one we're in now, but the downside of them not necessarily understanding office culture. But I do think there's a kind of lead by example point, isn't there? Exactly like you said. And sometime it's about, if people are fully remote, enabling younger workers to understand those dynamics that are around conversations that happen outside of the meetings. So having space, even if you're online, for just wider, it can be structured, but wider chats, wider sort of support, wider sort of social conversations, because fundamentally you've got to learn those relationship skills. It's, you know, work is relational, isn't it? We, you know, we sell to people we like, we buy from people we like, and they need to be able to understand that those dynamics and those times that you spend on either side of a meeting are probably often where the business gets done. So it is really important to try and build that into people's week.
Brilliant. So moving on then, obviously working remotely, flexibly, hybridly, it is working really well for a lot of people, including on this chat. So Emma, what would you suggest for those looking to pitch new ideas around flexible working? What might be your advice for getting buy-in and making things happen for the businesses that aren't fully on board?
Well, I think a lot of this comes down to helping people to understand what the roadmap looks like and what the benefits to the business are as much as to the individuals. And ultimately, that's about making the business case. And it's also about giving, if it's your manager or a leadership team, it's about giving people examples of how it's been done somewhere else. And the joy of the environment we're in, because so much has been shifting over the last few years, is that you will find examples of other people doing it. So again, Timewise has got loads of examples. We've got lots of reports and case studies on the website, including in really complex sectors where you wouldn't expect it to happen. So my advice would be, do your research, find examples of how it's been done in similar industries like yourselves. Business leaders will be competitive. They will want to know if other people are doing it, that they can do it as well, but they'll also want to know how it's done. So examples, really clear case studies, so that you're giving people a sense of how you can move from where you are to where you want them to get to, and evidence of the business benefits. And again, there's a lot of evidence to show that. And then I guess the other thing is just to try and encourage people to just test and try things. There's sometimes a nervousness if we're going to shift into different ways of working, different models of working within the kind of culture of organizations, that we just don't have the headspace. You know, you guys are in a very, very fast moving, tight margin sector. It's hard to make big changes. So don't ask for a big change, ask for a small change. Just say, can we try something informally over the next 3 months? Because again, this isn't always about changing policies and practices. It doesn't always have to be an HR conversation. It can be a line management conversation or a team conversation. So make your case, give some examples, talk about the business benefits, and ask people to test and try things differently, and then review on that basis. You know, the art of the possible is something that we should all be looking into in the world that we're in at the moment. And I think it's just trying to give your teams, your business leaders, the opportunity to see how they can get there.
Brilliant, thank you. And what's the latest with Timewise? We heard that there's a new report available.
Yes, there's always lots going on at Timewise. So there's a really interesting podcast series that you might want to listen to if you go onto Timewise's website, specifically looking at part-time work. But also there's a report out called Ending the Two-Tier Workforce. And again, it might be relevant for people, particularly in wholesale, because it's looking at how we can shift to a more flexible way of working, particularly in frontline sectors. And that is based on, I guess, again, a slightly different approach to thinking about how jobs are designed. So it's about thinking, if you're in a frontline sector, not just about working from home, but how can you give people more, we call it shift life balance, more advance notice, more predictability, and more input into their schedules. So if you can think about those 3 models, and there's lots of examples in the report of sectors that have done this, from Wix to WH Smiths to some really big construction firms that we've worked with over the years, to some NHS trusts. If you can think about flexibility through that lens, you can really start to create more parity within organisations and give people in frontline roles a bit of a say in how they work. And in doing so, as I said, the evidence is really clear that you reduce sickness absence, you reduce attrition significantly, and it's been documented over time.
Fantastic. I've just shared the report on the chat for anyone that wants to have a look. And before we move from flexible working on to doing good, is there anyone that would like to ask any questions or on what we've talked about so far before we move on? All good? No? Okay, brilliant. So moving on to your new role at Cook for Good. How did that come about, and tell us more?
Well, I guess so. I sort of got to a point where I thought, okay, I've worked in flexible working for a very long time. As somebody who likes to look at different ways of creating social change, I decided it was time personally to move on from Timewise. Timewise has got a great team. Timewise is doing really good things. I hit 50 and I thought, how much have I got left in terms of working life? I want to try something different. So I ended up consulting for a number of years. And then I am now working as the development director, and I'm on the board of a new social business, relatively new, called Cook for Good, that actually was set up by Karen, who was a woman that I worked with at Timewise for many years. I think the joy of getting older in life is that you get to work with people that you like and you trust. So that was my prerogative. But so I now work at Cook for Good, and we are, again, a social business, but the driver here is not about flexible working. The driver here is actually about going back to real grassroots need, which is tackling food insecurity and tackling health inequalities, and also isolation, three things that we see faced by people who are really struggling in communities across the UK at the moment. So we've always had a passion for food and for cooking and wanted to do something about it. And what Cook for Good is essentially we operate on a housing estate, and we are planning to operate on lots more housing estates across London and elsewhere. And we work very deeply with a particular community on that estate, people who are social housing tenants, who are on low incomes, and we bring them together through food and cooking to make good things happen. And we do that by running a food pantry, so people can come and they can shop for £3.50 a week, but they get about £40 worth of food. So these are people who are getting access to affordable and healthy food that's distributed to us by Felix. We also provide a whole range of cooking programs for people on the estate, so they can learn to eat healthily on a budget. And we create jobs and opportunities, because the way that we fuel all the work that we do in our community, and we distribute about 10,000 meals a year. We work with about 400 members of our pantry and about 1,000 other people who come through our doors all the time. The way we make that happen is in our professional kitchen that we have on the estate that we built. We run MasterChef style team building classes. So the link here is, again, we work with businesses in our community who want to do something good at quite a hyper local level, but also want to get a great experience from us. So they come in and we provide, I guess, in every week, there's normally 2, 3, 4 different business groups coming in. You've got 20 people in a room. Think 20 lawyers. We give them each a big chef's hat, a recipe, and what they have to do is they have to cook 100 meals in about 3 to 4 hours as part of a team building experience. Meals then get distributed out through our food pantry and to our community. So it's kind of, we call it sort of volunteering 2.0, because you are coming to cook and you're cooking meals for people who are needing access to good, healthy, affordable food. And then the profits from the team building that we do fuel the work that we do. So it's a double whammy, if you like. Is that the teams that come in are using their volunteering days, but we are charging them to do that because we're also providing an amazing team building experience. So, and again, the irony is, talking about flexible working and hybrid working, actually what we've identified over the last few years is that teams really like to come together physically. People use us for exec away days. They use us for sometimes for bringing new graduates in, talking about young people to bond and connect. They use us to do workshops around values, but essentially it's team building and it's volunteering. And that's what funds the work that we do and makes the meals that we make. So it's a really interesting new venture. it's grown incredibly fast over the last 3 years from an initial idea. And yes, Hilary, we're delighted that we collaborate with Felix, and I guess trying to find fundamentally a sustainable model to tackling food insecurity, because we've all seen food banks explode, and we've seen people really experience food insecurity, essentially because they're struggling in poverty over the last few years. Many of them are volunteer-led, many of them rely on grants. We want to be around for a long time. And actually, we see that businesses really want to help with this agenda as well. So when it comes to thinking about doing good in business, this is just a different approach. This is about doing good in your community and being able to give back while also benefiting from a really positive experience. So yes, that's what I'm doing now. And we work with all kinds of businesses. So my job is engaging businesses in what we do and also in growing what we do, because we want to create more Cook for Goods than the one that we currently have at the moment. We've proven it works, and now we're looking to expand.
Brilliant. And it's great to hear that Cook for Good is supported by Felix Partnership and part of the Fair Share family. Brilliant. I think everyone knows Hilary, and we all in some way have or worked with Fair Share previously. I know at JJ's all of our depots are aligned with Fair Share depots to support any surplus products. But you are speaking to a room full of people working in wholesale food and drink supply. So, what can we do to support Cook for Good?
Well, I mean, firstly, thank you for all that you do to support providing surplus food to charities, to organisations like Fair Share and Felix, and I'm sure others too. I think continue doing that, because we've got a real issue in, obviously, access to food and being able to rely on surplus food. I mean, our pantry opens once a week, and we have 2 sessions on a Thursday. We have around 400 people. People queue up every week. And we're able to do that because we rely on the surplus food that is distributed. I mean, we redistribute about 12 tons of food every year. So please carry on doing what you're doing from that perspective. But more broadly, I guess if you're interested as a business in doing good, whether it's looking at volunteering days, whether it's looking at being able to support community initiatives, one of the things that we would say is consider us for team building, because we've certainly found through many of the firms that we've worked with that there's a sort of, I guess over the last few years, there's been a real shift with many sort of ESG initiatives, that people are really trying to think about hyperlocal now. So if you're thinking about sort of the UN sustainability goals, tackling food poverty, tackling poverty generally, tackling issues around health, obesity, tackling issues like loneliness. Did you know that loneliness is as dangerous for you in terms of your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day? We have millions of older people in the UK who don't talk to a single person on a daily basis. We deal with people like that in our community all the time. We have the most amazing Grub Club, which is one of the programs that we run. We have the average age of it's for men who are mainly widowed and who haven't left their houses for a long time, and who we're trying to encourage back into our community to be really active, because being active, having purpose, is so good for your health and a long life. And the average age is about 75, and they come and they cook once a month with us in our kitchen. And they cook shepherd's pie. Well, they started off cooking shepherd's pie and bangers and mash. Now we've got them cooking shawarma and all kinds of recipes. So I would argue that all of that work is made possible by businesses who want to support their local community. And the point I was going to make is that we're really seeing a shift to hyperlocal support. So thinking about how you can support organisations on your doorstep, communities on your doorstep. We're based in King's Cross. We specifically set up on a housing estate which is 10 minutes walk from the massive redevelopment that we've seen in King's Cross. A huge amount of inward investment and opportunity, but actually you walk 10 minutes down the canal and the housing estate we're in has seen no benefit from that whatsoever. So we wanted to bring the businesses. So we work with people like Google and Meta who send their teams to us to do team building, because it's on their doorstep and they can see the impact, they can cook the food and they can see what happens. So yes, my case would be, if you think of provision in your organisation for team building, I'm sure you all do. For volunteering days, I'm sure you will do. Then maybe rather than going chasing chickens up a hill or painting a wall somewhere or doing paintboarding, think about how you can spend that budget on something which delivers massive social value, and come and talk to us at Cook for Good. It's a challenging time for a lot of people at the moment with the cost of living crisis, but there are lots of ways that businesses can help, and we see all sorts of businesses doing this, but we've got to kind of make it accessible and easy for organisations to engage.
Thanks, Emma. I'm feeling a kind of Women in Wholesale Cook for Good fair share mass. It could be a brilliant event, team building, all of that. The next thing was around ethical, responsible and sustainable leadership. Are these just buzzwords, or do they truly drive change?
I mean, they're used in lots of different ways by lots of different people, aren't they? And I guess it's trying to understand what they mean. I mean, just unpicking that. So ethical, I would argue that fundamentally ethical means thinking about your people, your profit and your planet in everything that you do. So we've talked about flexible working when it comes to people, making sure that your employees are looked after, supported, have some autonomy and control in their working lives so they feel good. We talk about people in our community as well. So it's about how do you make sure that you support the people that work for you and the people in the community around you in a way that you can, that is viable for your business. Profitability, obviously, that's what we all do every day, but how do you use your profits? As a social business, we invest 100% of ours, but other organisations may well allocate some provision to community support. And then planet, goes without saying, we need to look after our planet. We need to make sure that we've got green suppliers, etc., etc. So that's what ethical means. To make it sustainable, it's beyond a policy. It's beyond just saying I've got an ESG or an EDI policy. It's about making sure that it's part of core business practice, and to make sure that that is genuine for you, I think, is about leading by example. We talked about when it comes to flexibility, leaders doing it themselves, but it's also about making sure that your leaders are really clear on what that commitment looks like. It's about making sure that managers have the space and the time to be able to work out how to support good causes, enable their people to do volunteering. We hear a lot of the time that everyone gets 3 volunteering days a year or 2 volunteering days a year, but then they've never got the time to actually do anything with it, or they're not given a list of opportunities to consider when it comes to volunteering. So, there's a difference between having it in your policy and actually supporting people to have the headspace and the connections and the ideas to do that. And then also, the final point I would say about how to make it feel genuinely responsible. If you're genuinely wanting to be a socially responsible business as a business leader, it's about trying to do things with your community, not for them. So, we work with a whole range of amazing people in Cook for Good. And the challenge with making sure that we are not just trying to do something to them is that we consult with them. And we see people and we treat people with dignity and respect. And I think there's something as well about working both with diverse organisations and diverse individuals in your business that is really important about how we build communication styles to work with diverse groups outside. So it's about doing with, not doing for or doing to, and giving people time and space. And if you can build that into your everyday decision making and build that into how you do business, then it will be sustainable. But it's not just about having it written down as a policy that people don't understand, and it's not about treating that policy as separate to your values. You've got to build it into both.
Thank you, Emma. I think you've given us a lot to think about. You've already touched on how to make a meaningful impact beyond one-off initiatives, but is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
I guess just if it's about making sure that what you're doing really lasts. I would say just always ask, why are we doing this? So again, if your organization says we support X good cause, or we've got this policy on flexible working, or whatever it may well be, well, why? It's just really trying to understand it, about making sure that if you're going to try and do things for a while, that particularly in the context of kind of good causes, you're really thoughtful about what that means for you and the organisation to support. So to give you a very tangible example, a lot of the time, so we see this at Cook for Good, as I said, people are often given the opportunity to come and volunteer with us. Actually, volunteering, if a business says, oh, I'd like to come and volunteer, it takes a lot of time and effort for a charity to actually then facilitate that. And we don't always have a water paint, or we don't always have things to collect, or whatever it is. There's something about trying to shift from the mentality of we call it from can to catalogue, which is from saying it's not just about sort of a charity shaking a can and saying, give us some money or give us some of your free time, but it's actually about how can you, through your day-to-day activity, trade with good ethical businesses, and deliver good in your community, which is, from our side, that's about saying we have a catalogue of services we'll offer you. So we offer you team building. We also, I'd like to make a little plug of the most beautiful cookbook. If anyone is interested in soup, we have a very, very beautiful cookbook. So it's a sort of roundabout way of answering your question by saying, if you want to be able to do something on a long-term basis, then that's about building partnerships within your community with organizations where you ask them what works for them as much as what works for you as a business, and trying to build, again, the time into making that work, and also thinking about what works for a social community organization in your area. It might not just be offering volunteering, but offering to pay them to support you to do that volunteering, and thinking about different ways that you can help your community in a way that is viable for you as much as it's viable for them. So it's about having a very kind of transparent, open conversation at the get-go.
Brilliant. Thank you, Emma. Are there any final questions for Emma? Our time is almost up. Emma, you've given us so much to think about. Thank you so much, especially with the flexible working and what's going on right now. It's so topical. And then also with getting involved with more volunteering and doing good. And I don't think this will be the last time that we speak. So look forward to keeping in touch with you. And I will definitely share your details with everyone that's registered today. So thank you so much. Lots of thank you messages here.
Not at all. Thank you for the time. It was nice to have a conversation. And and if anyone is interested in team building or Cook for Good's work right now, do get in touch, or go to Timewise if you want some more advice and support about flexible working. But hopefully it's given you some food for thought. Excuse the pun.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.